the future of the Filecoin governance system. I have to say that I'm new in this position. I've been doing a lot of other things, but credit goes to my colleague, Caitlin Beagle. Caitlin did the design and the building of all of this. Oh, thank you. So all the brilliant ideas are Caitlin's, and all of the mistakes are mine. So, okay, let's start with a short history of Filecoin governance. Apologies for the Chinese translation. I did it all on Google Translate, but hopefully it won't be. When I spoke in Thai, I used an early Thai Google Translate, and it turned everybody's names into objects. So hopefully that won't happen here. All right, secret origin. Oops. Secret origin story, like Spider-Man. We were bitten by a radioactive Vitalik. So the true origin of the governance system in Filecoin is actually the same. It's a friendly fork of the Ethereum improvement protocol. We just took away the Ethereum and added the Filecoin, and that's how we did it. And that's a great model to build on. The Ethereum system has managed to successfully navigate a bunch of really tricky governance issues, including, of course, the move from proof of work to proof of stake, which involved a coordination over a very large ecosystem. For those of you who haven't seen this, this is basically the current FIP process. You come up with an idea, you write that idea up, you get everyone to agree, and then you implement it. Easy. It turns out it's not quite as easy as this. We've struck a few problems, as you probably know. By far the hardest one for us has been consensus. Many FIPs, well, actually the FIP process has worked largely for technical FIPs. We've had 48, I think, FIPs successfully pass. But when it comes to more challenging tweaks of the ecosystem as a whole, it's been very hard to get consensus. And what we've found often is people will make a lot of effort to get to this point, and then consensus will fail. And this is, we've seen this happen across the whole of the ecosystem. So new or members of different constituencies around the world have gone through and struggled to get consensus. Core developers, core ecosystem providers have also failed to get consensus. The other part that's been challenging is this bit here. So people will come up with ideas, present FIPs, and then they just don't go anywhere. There's no movement pushing this way. And I think one of the reasons for that is because consensus is very difficult. People lose the incentive to move these things forward. So for instance, FIP editors or technical experts will look at something here and go, that will never reach consensus, and so they don't push it along. And so what that means is people have the idea, they talk about it a lot, but they feel very disempowered and no changes happen. Oops. So why are these challenges? Given that the Ethereum process seems to work so well, why hasn't it worked for Filecoin? Well, unlike Ethereum, we have always had very different constituencies with different incentives. This is from the original paper. And the idea is that we were building an economy where we would take these people with very different incentives and turn them into an engine of alignment that would create genuine storage for clients and for the world at large. So as one of the first deep-in networks, we, like Helium, and have really not that many others, have this grounding in a real product. But the real product means that there are challenges. People have different incentives. Storage providers might have one incentive. Token holders might even have another. Ecosystem partners and clients and developers have different incentives. So what we've seen is a large proposal will go through, and it may change the balance or perceive to change the balance between our stakeholders, and that means there hasn't been consensus over this whole network. So So what we have is the island economy, but we need to come up with a system that supports all of the island and all of the economy. And even now, at the beginning of Filecoin's voyage, we already have a very big and complicated economy with lots of different interested parties. So we recognized this about a year ago, and so we began, or Caitlin began to research how we might fix this. And basically work out a way that if we can't get consensus as a community, how can we move a FIT proposal forward even without that consensus? So, spoilers. So, oh yeah, okay, there we go. So the decision we have is voting, right? This is how large countries or large organizations that have a lot of different stakeholders can break that tie when they can't all agree simultaneously. Good. This lettering is a little bit small, but basically the rule here is if we can't get consensus, anyone in the ecosystem can call for a vote, right? And so what we have is an option here that if you bring this through and you're not getting agreement, you can call for a vote of the entire ecosystem. How does that vote take place? Well, we have the different constituencies that we've talked about, and each of those have a certain amount of vote, and we average those over. Now, every time we show this slide, people have the same question, which is, why not just the token holders, right? Why not just have a vote where everybody who has a token can participate? There's a lot of reasons why this is, right? But I think I can talk about this a little bit. One is, remember, we're trying to represent consensus here, right? We're trying to represent all of these different constituencies that all have a different element of our ecosystem. We can't necessarily get agreement on everybody, but we need to get some level of buy-in with all of these groups. So to give you an example, right? So clients, right? So clients are represented in the economy of Filecoin. Essentially, the staked Filecoin is a sort of economic representative of the interests of the clients. But the clients don't own that staked Filecoin, right? The clients are very separate from that. So even though they're represented in their economy, they're not represented as token holders. They may have tokens as well, but they're not represented in that way. Storage providers are an interesting case, right? Storage providers have invested in the same way as customers have a lot into our ecosystem. They may not have a lot of tokens, but they're key players in this ecosystem. And developers is interesting. So in the Ethereum system, core developers have a lot of power. That's one of the reasons why they were able to switch from proof of work to proof of stake. What we found out is in situations where there's a spicy FIP, where there's a controversial FIP, we've taken it to the core developers to play that role that they play in Ethereum, and core developers don't want that role, right? Core developers we don't know how to represent the needs of everybody in the ecosystem. We can't speak for APAC storage providers. We can't speak for we don't know, we're just programmers. Leave us alone. We need to hack code, right? So developers need to have some representation, but we're actually sort of contracting them a little bit so they have a smaller amount. The other thing that I want to emphasize here is no matter how the vote goes, right, all of these actors have a right of exit, right? The real power underlining any governance system in the world of crypto is the right of exit, right? So token holders could sell, right? May not be a great time to sell, but they can sell, right? Developers can stop developing, right? They can move on to other networks. Clients have it a little bit tricky, right? Because their data is stored on the network. They've got this investment already, right? And storage providers in a similar way. It's tricky for them to fork because they already have this existing network. So really all of this, and all any governance system is in this environment, is to give some wiggle room, to change the system so that people don't get so frustrated that they want to fork. And like definitely one of the things that we felt looking at the ecosystem as a whole is that storage providers were the most frustrated, right? Storage providers felt very strongly that they weren't represented in the existing consensus system. So even though they're token holders, even though they work with clients, we wanted them to have an extra say in this system. Okay. The one more thing is that we could do a token holder only system, right? Because in a more mature economy, the tokens would represent all of these interests, right? But we're not a mature economy, right? We're just developing. And as Juan mentioned yesterday, we don't know that much about this ecosystem as it emerges, right? Everybody has a little piece of the whole. So one of the things we wanted to do as we sketched out this ecosystem, this system, is we didn't want to build something and then have the whole system collapse, right? That suddenly everybody would vote to change from Filecoin to ice cream coin, right? And that everybody would become ice cream manufacturers or something else. So everyone would agree to move all the money to somebody else, right? So we wanted to set up guardrails as well for this system. So, so there are a lot of guardrails in this proposal. One of the guardrails, as you can see, is that we have these different constituencies. And we've stuck in a couple more guardrails for FIPS that have really big changes. In most FIPS, as they would go through, they'll go through and either they get consensus or they'll get a vote. For these, right, which are crypto economic ones, things that change the balance. So if you can think of Filecoin Plus, for instance, that might change the quality adjustment, or governance FIPS, things that change this entire system so that like Stephen is in charge of everything, right? We need a check and balance there. Sorry, I mean, we kind of do. But you make a good king. And also security, right? If there are security bugs, right? We want something fairly fast. So this is sort of what we're proposing. So these are sort of the categories. Some of them are more important than others. We're going to have a guardrail. What does this guardrail look like? We're not 100% sure, and this is where I want to get your feedback, right? We think it's going to be an oversight committee. This is very common both in crypto and in wider systems. We want it to act fast for security fixes so we can rush those through, but we also want it as a break for when we're doing these crypto economic and governance changes. We want representatives of everybody so that everyone gets a say. Should they be nominated? Should they be elected? Should they be permanent? Should they be permanent? Should they be temporary? What members? What can they overrule? Can they be overruled? Like all of these are open questions that we want to kind of discuss with the rest of the community. Remember that this is only like a final check and balance. This won't change everything, right? This is merely to stop the switch from making Stephen King or making Falcon ice cream, right? Like, so this is just like a final stop. What we suspect is once we get this going, we can like pull away from this whole thing, but we do want some guardrails in there, at least at the beginning. The trickiest part of this is actually what these guardrails could be called. We were going to call them the guild, but there's already the developer guild. Technical advisory committee is good. Senate is it's a bit posh. Consultative committee, I don't know. Guardians is one of the ones that was suggested, which makes it seem very Marvel Cinematic Universe. But anyway, we'll take input on that too. All right, I'm gonna talk about the presence now. For those of you who know StoreSwift, we've built on-chain voting. We've basically built a tool to make this work. You can go to it, you can play around with it now. It works with all of the different constituencies, and the StoreSwift people are happy to sort of walk you through that. We have some other tooling for temperature checks. We have some discussion areas and things like that, and we're going to sort of introduce people to it. But the most important thing, right, is that this is a work in progress, right? We've built the tools so we can kick the tires, but what it really needs is participation, right? This is not going to be a governance system that is truly representative of everyone unless people feel that they have participated in it. And for me, the most important of this, when I say you, is actually the people in this room and the people on Zoom. I think one of the things, to be honest, that we realized in taking feedback from everyone, and thanks to Jing, is that a lot of the perception of how decisions are made in the ecosystem is that it's made by the core, but it's not made by the heart. Right? The core of the ecosystem are core developers working on the tooling, working on the main sort of implementations. But the heart of the Filecoin ecosystem exists in the APAC community, right? And I just want to emphasize that one of the reasons we're trying to build this is so that people not only can feel represented, but they can actually vote and change how our ecosystem works. And the only way we can do that is by working together to work out how the system can work. So that's it.